raw, uncut, and unapologetic. Welcome to Men Talking Mindfulness with your hosts Jon Macaskill and Will Schneider. Here we focus on helping men and those with men in their lives solve some of life's complex challenges through understanding the practices of mindfulness and how they can help. Each episode is in an environment free of judgment and criticism, with a focus on authenticity and inner peace. Let's dig in.
The truth is, another pill is not the best answered. When we acknowledge that sleep health and mental health hold a bi-directional relationship, we can begin to approach the problem from the cause rather than the symptom. We now know that poor sleep health is linked to all-cause mortality. Rates of heart attack, coronary heart disease, stroke, asthma, COPD, cancer, arthritis, depression, including suicidal ideation, chronic kidney disease, and diabetes are all significantly increased by inadequate quantity and quality of sleep. If those risks are not scary enough, poor sleep can cause daytime fatigue, resulting in more car accidents, poor work performance, a likelihood of a lower salary, challenges with emotional intelligence, managing relationships, hunger and weight management, and the list goes on and on. This is a quote from our guest today, Robert Sweetman. We are so excited for this conversation with Robert about sleep. Jon and I, just in case you didn't know, are both sleep enthusiasts. So thank you everybody for tuning in to Men Talking Mindfulness, the show where we delve into the crossroads of mindfulness, masculinity, and optimal living for the modern human. I'm Will Schneider. I'm joined by my co-host over there, Jon Macaskill. It's great to be back. We are joined by, and we need to listen to this, incredible. I really love this bio here. We are joined by our special guest, sleep scientist, Robert Sweetman. Robert is a former Navy SEAL with Buds Class 284. He was deployed twice and was eventually medically retired after a back injury, but also had multiple other hidden injuries. Those included PTSD and traumatic brain injury, TBI, obstructive sleep apnea, and insomnia. While battling with sleep, Robert leaned heavily into Ambien to go to sleep and stimulants to wake up. At one point in time, he was using NyQuil to go to sleep every night. Things changed for Robert in April 23rd, 2017, when one of Robert's platoon mates, Ryan Larkin, took his own life. Ryan had also been struggling with sleep for a long time, as well as PTSD and TBI. Robert was impacted by Ryan's death and took it upon himself to better understand why this happened. Ryan's father, Frank, launched research on TBI, while Robert dove into sleep science. After years of research, Robert discovered the bidirectional relationship between sleep and mental health. Robert dedicated his life to studying the study of sleep science to help all people, especially veterans. 4 years later, in 2021, he co-founded 62 Romeo to help people understand sleep and how to attain good quality sleep. Great story. I'm excited already. Today, I know we're going to get to you in a second, Robert. Thanks for hanging on there as we go through this. In today's show, we're going to cover 62 Romeo's 4 pillars of good sleep, the importance of sleep for overall well-being and performance, the consequences of poor sleep, how to achieve and maintain high-quality sleep, the impact of caffeine on sleep, the importance of sleep hygiene, the effects of alcohol, cannabis, melatonin, and CBD on sleep quality, and much more. We're honored to have you here, Robert, joining us today to share all your sleep wisdom, and we will be diving in just a second. I just want to say hi to my co-host, Jon, over there. Good to see you, Jon. It's great to be back for another episode of Men Talking Mindfulness.
Amen, brother. And we're, constantly tinkering with the show, constantly tinkering with the audio, the video, and we've got a new background. So, if you're watching, let us know what you think of these new backgrounds. We're super excited to be doing this. So aside from that, we're going live. We're back live, and this is our second to last show of the season. We'll have one more show next week, and we're going to be covering cutting the news out, or at least limiting how much news we watch, because news media, social media, that can add to our stress, which ties directly into our conversation today with Rob about, hey, as our stress increases, our sleep decreases, and vice versa. So anyway, over and above that, we've got a free gift for you, our listeners, our watchers. If you'd like to subscribe to our weekly newsletter, simply text the word mindful, MIND, FUL, to 33777. That's 33777, and you'll get our free mindfulness workbook, and you'll be added to our mailing list. and you'll get a link to take a 21-day mindfulness course for only $9. So you get the free mindfulness workbook. You get added to our weekly newsletter that comes out with stuff to optimize our leadership and then to optimize our life. So there's lots of stuff here. So simply text mindful, MINDFUL, to 33777. And then we'd love it if you would subscribe to our YouTube channel. The link is simply youtube.com/@ Men Talking Mindfulness. And that's the @ symbol, Men Talking Mindfulness. And then if you're a fan of the show, please leave us a review and share it with your network. All right. Wow, that was a lot. Okay, so now let's get into this opening practice. Rob, we're honored to have you, brother. So great to have you. I know this has been a show a long time in the coming. We've worked together with 62 Romeo. I went through a SEAL exclusive cohort and learned a ton from what it is you teach, and very excited to share what it is you teach with our audience and then share more about what 62 Romeo is. That said, we're going to start with our opening practice just by simply doing 5 focused and intentional breaths. So if you're watching or if you're listening, go ahead and close your eyes if that's safe. Otherwise, keep your eyes open, but tune into your breath, tuning into the physical aspects of your breath. And we'll start by exhaling, emptying our lungs, holding empty, nice deep breath in, inhaling and inflating from the bottom to the top, holding full at the top, and relax, letting it go, holding empty at the bottom. Nice deep breath in, hold at the top, and release. Deep breath in, hold, and let it go. And with that, as you're letting it go, let go of the stress, the anxiety, the tension that you may be holding in your life and in your body. Holding empty at the bottom for a second. Nice deep breath in, filling all the way to the top. Extra sip at the top. Hold and release. And I lost count along the way, so we're just going to say that's 5 and be done with it. Let's move our shoulders, move our fingertips, bring some micro movements back into our body. And if you're not watching, if you're listening to the show, Rob is sitting there in beautiful nature, and we've talked about the power of nature and getting out into nature. So he's coming to us live, I believe, from Balboa Park in San Diego, and we're happy to have you, brother. So I know I'll jump right in, Will, and then we'll turn it over, go back and forth. So I know we covered in the intro, Will did, a little bit about your background and then your personal struggles with sleep. Can you briefly tell us a little bit more about that and how that felt to you physically and emotionally, and how you performed with that struggle of sleep?
Absolutely. I did want to take just a second to just really enjoy this moment. It's special, first of all, that I can be on this podcast and reach your audience, but I find it really special that team guys can connect. And so this opportunity is just, I'm excited. This is awesome. And I just think the world of you, John. So thank you.
Well, I appreciate that, brother. Back at you, man. Back at you, brother.
Yeah. So to describe how bad my sleep was, it was bad, man. And, part of it is the job. Part of it is the SEAL teams that we're both so intimately familiar with. The op tempo, nighttime missions, the constant cycle, the grind, always busy, always looking for the next work. And, it just never ends. You want it to get easier, but it doesn't. And so we start to pick up bad habits. Some of those bad habits are using sedatives to go to sleep, because we may not be able to sleep on a natural circadian rhythm. I didn't even know what a circadian rhythm was in the teams, nor did I respect sleep for that matter. It's just not a thing. You don't care about it. What you want is to be the best operator and just gung-ho, go after it, do anything, stay up as long. And when you go through Hell Week, they actually kind of make you think that it's okay to stay up for a week at a time and operate. But I think I'm still recovering from the negative effects of staying up for that long, psychologically and physically. But anyway, so part of this is developing bad habits without education. So I'm using sedatives to go to sleep, whether it's because we're on a rotator and we're on a C5 aircraft and we're popping Ambien to try to get some sleep because we know we're going to show up in country or whatever, or I'm shifting my schedule. So now we're doing nighttime operations this week, and then the next week I'm doing KLE engagements, and I can't sleep. So I, turn to Ambien. Or, some folks use something as simple as alcohol or OTC, drugs like the NyQuil, right? And
Yep.
I remember, transitioning out of the Navy, and I didn't have access to Ambien anymore, and just using NyQuil. You get one cap, you drink it, and if it's too full, you feel like you can't wake up in the morning. If you get a little bit less, and I played this game of just drugging myself up to fall asleep,
Been
not
there.
knowing what real sleep looked like, or what, how to approach like going to sleep naturally, or why I couldn't sleep to start with. And there's a secondary side effect to that, right? When you're doping yourself up with whatever drug that there's a ton of legal drugs that doctors are willingly prescribing for people's entire lives. It breaks my heart. Whatever drug or sedative you're using to fall asleep, there's also a secondary effect to that, right? You're not really getting the sleep that you need. And that can have immediate effects, and it can have long-term effects. But some of the immediate effects are drowsiness, right? You feel like you're not quite there. You're not quite awake. You didn't recover fully. And so then what do? Step 2, right? Start drinking caffeine or other
Yep.
stimulants, whatever you have to do. And you kind of push yourself through the day. And then sometimes it becomes an addiction. We can talk about the effects of, overusing caffeine and stuff like that. But definitely one of them is like, now I'm wired and I can't go to sleep. So what do? Pop another pill.
Right.
And this vicious cycle can lead to, deprecated sleep cycles and not getting the restoration, both, psychologically and physically. And then over time, your body just starts to fall apart, your mind, your psyche, your mental health. And then you wonder, like, how in the heck did I get here? And by that time, the behavioral routines are so ingrained that you don't know the difference. You don't know anything else. It is an absolute puzzle. And so that's, some of the stuff we try to decode in the 62 Romeo program. I hope that answered your question.
It did, man. It sure did.
Yeah. Well, why don't we go a little bit deeper into, where did the name 62 Romeo come from? And then kind of dive into, all this research that you've worked with or kind of studied over the last several years to come up with the 4 pillars of good sleep.
Yeah, people call me the sleep genius. I did not come up with that name. Another team guy gave it to me. So I'll own it. It's great for marketing and it's fun. When my jiu-jitsu coach found out that was my nickname, it brought a whole new light to our jiu-jitsu training. Right now, I'm required to do collar chokes every match.
Real quick,
anyway,
I just got to pause real quick. So, Rob, I think you won a gold medal in a jiu-jitsu competition last week, and he sent me pictures. He sent me pictures with a black eye.
Right there, look at that shit.
Yeah, there
God
it is.
Damn, congratulations.
And that might be why he's on his phone. So it's just blurry enough to where we can't see his black eye that he got. But hey, look at that gold medal, man.
Yeah, I can't wear it because it hurts my neck. It's too heavy.
Sorry,
Mr.
man.
T over there.
I interrupted you, brother. So your flow with 62 Romeo, your sleep genius, and your jiu-jitsu coach, man.
Yeah, so they call me the sleep genius, but I am a student, John, in the truest sense. I don't know anything, man. And the more that we try to dissect humanity through the scientific lens, the less we really know. I mean, we don't know completely, fully anything about anything, right? Like the just one cell in the human body, we don't fully understand. The common cold, we don't have a single cure to any virus, yet sometimes we feel like we understand everything, especially in American medicine. But yet we we disregard things like spirituality. We disregard consciousness because it can't be captured within the scientific method. Then we can't, reproduce it and put it on a chart and analyze it. Then it just doesn't make sense to us as humans. So I accept the limitations of my mind. I know that I don't know everything, and I'm seeking, right? I'm seeking knowledge. And so that's kind of where this all started. I was devastated by Ryan. And truthfully, it's hard to talk about, but when he committed suicide, like, I wanted to commit suicide, or maybe I didn't want to, but I thought that might be me. I might be next. And it didn't make any sense. Like, why would you think that? It's just bizarre. But I thought he was a better team guy than me. So why did this happen with him? And am I next? Like, I just didn't understand it. It just totally blew my mind. So the way that I diverted all of that energy was to take something that's very negative and turn it into something positive. And I use that power to fuel myself to research sleep. So I don't think I've, unlocked the code on sleep. I do have a lot of really good information and a lot of great tips for people. And a lot of times people can see a truly transformational experience through 62 Romeo and the things that we do. But I say that because I want to remain humble and I want to remain the student. So I'm always accepting and open to new information. But 62 Romeo is a name. I don't know, man. Like, this stuff just happens, right? Everything in life just happens. And the more I open up myself up to the path that's before me, whatever your beliefs are, the easier things are. And I just go with the flow. And 62 Romeo, I kid you not, is as simple as this. I am so lazy that when I'm typing emails, I switched 6 weeks to sleep restoration, which was the original program. It's very descriptive. 6-2-R. And then when I went on, what was it? The Scuttlebutt show. He said, of course, and all military do this just naturally. He read it, alphanumerically or whatever you call it. Oh yeah, 62 Romeo. And I'm like, should I correct him or no, let's just roll with it. And the rest is history, man. So
I love it.
That's it. I wish I had a better story, but
that's a great story. That's a great story. So what are the 4 pillars then? I mean, I know them because I just went through the course, but for our audience, for Will, for those listening and watching, what are the 4 pillars of good sleep?
Well, let me try to break this down in a way that people can have something to take home and use today, right?
Yeah,
great.
The first thing that we have to understand is that we, as in the image of ourselves that we've created through a life of culture, whether you grow up in this state or that state. I have the military culture, I have the jiu-jitsu culture, all these assumptions that I build in my mind. And then my survival mechanisms and my ego starts to build this construct of who I am and what I do. And now we describe things like the basal ganglia in the brain, like how we build these habitual responses, right? So we have to understand the concept of our mind being a thing that is kind of like on autopilot. And in fact, it could be part of the problem, right? And I say that with all due respect to everyone and everyone's beliefs and, where you're at in life. I know it's not that easy, but if we challenge our assumptions, if we challenge our ideas and our behaviors, it's possible to let in new thoughts and new behaviors. And so that's the first thing that, when we look at cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, which we're not doing therapy, that you have to be licensed to do that. We remove the psychotherapeutic part and we replace it with psychoeducational. And we take away the therapists, which are in short supply. Beautiful people, but there's not enough therapists to help the millions of veterans that need help today. We put in a coach. We transfer the information over education. One of the first things that is unique and very classic to cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia is the idea that we have negative sleep thoughts, right? So the thoughts are things, and a lot of times our self-talk really can be cleaned up. And when we hide it in our heads and nobody hears it, we can get away with negatively talking to ourselves. I hate myself. I'm never going to be a success, or I'm so nervous before this podcast, I'm not going to do well, right? These are thoughts that can come up in our head, but they're actually things that we can look at and take ownership over, right? So if we look at negative sleep thoughts, these are thoughts specifically pertaining to sleep. So for example, a lot of folks that come through the program are thinking things like, I'm a terrible sleeper. I never get enough sleep. I always wake up every night and I never feel restored. And while these things might be true, right, at face value, the fact that we're saying them in our head and we believe them solidify the actual behavior and our reality. And so if we take a look at those and we write down all of our negative sleep thoughts and we let those settle, and then we return to those and take the time to restructure those as positive sleep thoughts. What we're doing is considered cognitive restructuring, right? But it's a practice of taking those negative sleep thoughts and reframing them as positive sleep thoughts, so we can now show gratitude. We can now start to say things that will elicit in the future, as soon as we believe them, will elicit that very behavior, those positive behaviors. And I know that sounds super woo-woo and like, no, there's no way that the
Not to
things that
us.
I say in my head, but for the listeners, this stuff really works. It's just that simple, but you have to believe it. You have to believe in yourself, and you have to oftentimes repeat these positive sleep thoughts over and over until they become a part of your process, until they build new neural pathways, right? And so that's a very important part of like self-care. These are free tools that you can use at home. You can do this on your own. One thing that I catch folks doing, and this is the ego trying to step in and control the exercise that we're doing. And, I won't share anybody's individual, comments, but overall, I see things like, well, I'll never get great sleep, but, since Rob says that I'm supposed to, get good sleep, okay, right? And then, I'm kind of like, exemplifying the thought here, but it might be something as simple as, my back pain will keep me awake, but I'm going to sleep better tonight. And so we try to stay away from those type of, compound thoughts, and we try to stay away from the negativity. We try to stay away from words like don't, can't, won't, things like that. I liken this to, I like to tell a story of when there's a part of skydiving, which I know John. You know what I'm going to say, and you've been through the same training. So a lesson to kind of reference how we structure these positive thoughts. Nice, neat, and clean thoughts, right? When we're in skydive training and we are reviewing the possible bad things that could happen, and skydive training is one of the most deadly parts of all special forces training. We lose a lot of folks to that. So this is a very serious topic, right? So you're under canopy and you're flying down, and there's a couple of things that can happen. I mean, there's a bunch of things that can happen from the time you jump out of the airplane till the time you pull. Maybe you have a bag lock. There's a bunch of stuff that can go wrong. But let's say you're under canopy. Okay, we've made it this far. Now we're turning and we're descending at a different rate as someone else who's skydiving there, right? And maybe this person is not paying attention to where they're at. Maybe they can't see you. Maybe the sun's in their eyes and you can't see them. But all of a sudden you come within each other's bubble, right? Like you're getting close, danger close. And maybe I'm turning left and he's turning right. And oh crap, all of a sudden I realize I'm about to hit his lines. So the first thing you teach you is do this. So you bounce off the lines and you don't get caught and wrapped up in the lines. But what if that doesn't work? What if you get caught up in the lines? And so what they talk about is definitely calm of mind, like relax, think through this. This next choice could be very, very important, right? And so in communication, and this is the point of what I'm trying to say, in communication, if one person is communicating to the other in this potential life or death situation, it's absolutely critical that they use the right words. So if the person, let's say the person below is trying to communicate to the person above, and he's concerned that maybe he's tied up in his lines or there's something wrong, and he wants to not cut away. right? So for example, there's a mechanism within the skydiving apparatus where you can cut away and the parachute goes away, but that comes with a consequence, right? Really fast, the parachute can go this way or that way, and the guy on bottom is trying to tell the guy up top, I see something, and I don't want you to cut away, right? And so he says, don't cut away. And guess what? The guy up top, with the wind resistance, everything else, all he hears is cut away.
Cut away.
And he cuts away, and the problem gets worse. So the point of that story is that we're not, going to say things that are structured in that way. We're not saying don't cut away. We don't even talk about the cutaway if we don't want it, right? We talk about the positive in a very simple sentence structure. So an example of that would be like, if my negative sleep thought is I suck at sleep, then my positive sleep thought is I'm great at sleep. Nice and simple, keep it easy, and with a little bit of practice, these things can just become a reality. So that's the first thing. Let me pause there to get comments.
Oh man, I say just keep pressing on.
Well, it makes a lot of sense. Like, we're really hacking into neuroplasticity, right? And, we have old patterns of speaking to ourselves in a negative way, and they continue to repeat those patterns versus like, cognitive behavioral therapy is like speaking to ourselves in a new way, putting ourselves literally in a different part of our mind by speaking in a way that's positive and uplifting and like sleep affirming. So yeah, so that's a great place to start. That's where it starts. And so thank you for that.
You're welcome, brother. So
We got a couple,
you mentioned
3 more pillars, right?
behavioral therapy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we got 3 more. Let's knock them down. So cognitive behavioral therapy, I just want to make one note, is different than cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia. CBT is used for a lot of, they're similar. They're in the same lane, same word, same practice,
Mm-hmm.
but cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia actually uses, I feel like, less psychotherapy and more things like sleep restrictions, right? You're not going to give sleep restrictions with a normal CBT patient. And I'm speaking out of term because I'm not a therapist, nor do I want to be, but there's slight differences. So a lot of times therapists will talk about CBT, not realizing that CBTI is slightly different. So anyways, just do your research. So looking at the 4 pillars, we remove the T portion of CBTI because we don't want to do therapy, nor do the guys and gals that we work with want therapy. They're sick of therapy, right? What they want is community. What they want is give me the information, empower me, give me the tools, my toolbox, and let me figure this out on my own. And trust in me and believe in me. And that's what we do. So we're empowering more than analyzing and judging, if that makes sense. So the education piece is another one of our pillars, and we pull that out because the sleep education piece, a lot of these can be contained within CBTI, but we take the essence of CBTI and place that as one of the pillars. But sleep education means a couple of things. One, I want to give you the information that you need to really navigate your sleep challenges, or structuring your sleep, or sleep cycles. A lot of times we do really unique sleep scheduling with first responders who are on call. Like some of our firefighters are on call 48 hours straight. It's crazy. It's gnarly. How do we handle those situations? And I can talk about that, right? But the sleep education also gives me the ability to talk through why people should do what I'm telling them to do, right? So if I'm saying, look, here's this laundry list of information. We've done our research. We actually know what we're talking about, right? And I'm sure at times the material gets dry and, people tune out. It's okay, right? We review this stuff, and, you don't have to pick up every little bit of detail. But what I want you to do is believe and trust in me that we know what the heck we're talking about. And if you do, we're going to do some interesting things to help your sleep. But I need that trust. I need that faith and that belief in me that we know what we're talking about. So that's the secondary effect of the sleep education. We're actually teaching people. We want to graduate them as sleep ambassadors, and they can pass this information on. You wouldn't believe how many people go back to their command, go back to their department or their division, and they create their own presentations and teach they're individuals. So now we're making ripple effects, and that's what I want. I don't want to keep this information under lock and key. I want to make an impact, because that's what we need right now. With the suicide epidemic is out of control, insomnia and sleep related issues it's an absolute epidemic. It's widespread. Not just with veterans and first responders, but with civilians too. Like a third of our country short sleeping. It's just the veterans and first responders. It is way worse. It's way out of control. So my goal is to make impact, not to make dollars and cents, and not to place barriers to entry through insurance companies, pharmaceutical companies, therapy. You have to get a referral for this and a waiting period for that. No, I want to expand and get this information out to everybody as fast as possible, so we can begin the healing process. So I think that's two, right? I think the third one is a really deep topic. It's a pillar that is very much embodied in this podcast. It's something that has been a powerful part of my transformation from being, basically a negative Nancy alcoholic, just piece of trash as I'm transitioning out of the Navy, completely confused at life and everything, to the individual that I am today, which is I love myself and I am firing on all 8 cylinders. Look at this. Doctor said I'd never do this, and I did it. So a lot of this comes back to mindfulness, meditation, and we can embody this with the physical practices of relaxation techniques, right? And there's a ton of different ways to meditate. One of the primary ways that people get started is through focus-based meditation. So if we're focusing on our breathing, or if we're focusing on these relaxation.
Hopefully he's going to come back. We got a little break in the action.
Yep. So we'll see if he comes back.
Hopefully. So we're on. So
Pillar number
so what I'm
three.
learning so far, John, is first is there we go. Okay, Robert, you're back. Okay, cool.
All right, where'd I lose you?
So we were talking about the types of meditation, focus-based meditation.
Relaxation, meditation, and mindfulness.
Love it. I love this topic. And what a great topic for this podcast. But we teach relaxation techniques. So that can be considered a type of meditation, right? When we do our breathing, or when we focus on mantra, or when we focus on, different types of visualization within the mind, those are focus-based meditations, right? So in a way, we're meditating with the relaxation techniques, but we also have added benefits of, like the book James Nestor's Breathe that you finally got me to read, John. Thank you.
Yeah.
He talks about strengthening all of these breathing muscles and the entire nasal cavity. That's a benefit. Reducing obstructive sleep apnea symptoms. That's a benefit. Increasing lung capacity. That's a benefit. Purifying the blood. That's a benefit. Increasing prefrontal activity, right? Getting into a rest and digest or parasympathetic nervous system state, like relaxing the autonomic nervous system. You can find all of these things through these wonderful techniques. So what we do is very, very specific. And we structured relaxation techniques to do a couple of things. One, we have a series of relaxation techniques. So we acknowledge that everybody's different, and that everybody is going to like something different. And so we offer a menu of relaxation techniques that once you learn them, you can, you have a chance to them every day for a week. You can take those tools with you for the rest of your life. And if you like box breathing versus Ujjayi breath, or like whatever you like, then that whatever floats your boat, that's great. But we walk people through a progression. So we start pretty easy. And the first one is breath with sound, right? And so making sound kind of makes people feel a little uncomfortable sometimes, but we're breaking the ice of like thinking about how we're breathing and what happens when we breathe, right? So we bring it inward, and then we start to, the next one is box breathing. So we're looking at timing, we're looking at segmenting and mapping, like how much we're breathing in, we're holding. And so we start to build on these techniques. And as we go along, we try not to talk about anything woo-woo, because sometimes people don't like talking about meditation and yoga and this stuff. So we just keep it nice and scientific, right? This is a breathing exercise. Here's the result you're going to get. But by the time we're done, we have transitioned from the physical practice of breathing into more of a mindfulness practice and an awareness. When we're done, we have this crescendo with an amazing practice that is literally 25, 30 minutes long and will knock your socks off. I fall asleep half the time on the Zoom call during this practice. And by the way, what a great job for me to have. Like, I get to do breathing exercises every day with our wonderful relaxation coaches. I mean, even if I don't want to, like, I'm getting tons and tons of practice, and I love it. It's great.
Yeah.
Same here,
Awesome.
man.
And is
Same
that
here.
we have one more pillar? Is that, we worked
we do.
through the mind, we worked with relaxation, we worked with education, and there's one more, yeah?
Yeah, absolutely. The last pillar, I saved best for last, is what separates us from CBTI practitioners, right? And that is that we send equipment to the individual's house. We send hundreds of dollars of equipment to the participant's house. And this serves a couple of purposes, right? The number one challenge with CBTI professionals, which is, by the way, the most effective, treatment for insomnia, it's like 80% effective as tested at the FDA, reducing or eliminating insomnia. That's insane. Why aren't we just doing that for everybody? Well, because it's 1,000 to 1 on practitioners to veterans who need help. So that's why this space, we're busting it wide open. So the number one challenge with this protocol is compliance, right? And so this last pillar that I want to describe not only improves compliance, but it also improves establishing the circadian rhythm. It's kind of a circadian rhythm scheduling protocol. And so what we know is that, and by the way, if we could just get people out in nature back in a tribal sense, we wouldn't need this program, because the earth and the sun and the energy will solve all of this, right? But the fact is, we live in our minds, we live in the city, we have a number of different challenges, and so we have to actually walk people through this. But with that said, we're sending a device that simulates a sunset and a sunrise, right? And we want to trigger that every day at the same time. So the sunset goes down and the sunrise goes up. Now, this is we could do an entire podcast on the different sun cycles, depending on whether you're in Montana or you're in Norway or in China or whatever. It's a huge topic that deserves a lot of unpacking. But in essence, our eyes are meant to see a sundown, right? The sunset. And with that, for millions of years, our DNA, it's all encoded, like the melanopsin ganglion cells in our retina are photos. They're detecting that type of light, those wavelengths, right? And that triggers the melatonin production, right, from the pineal gland in our brain. Melatonin is a sleep hormone, right? And so when we have things like the phone in our face or artificial light at night, Alan is what they call it, it totally tricks our brain, and it throws us for a loop, and that's not good, because now all of a sudden we think that it's time to go awake, or it's time to stay awake, right? So what we're doing is, we got the relaxation techniques. We build this wind down period where now is the time to put aside the emails. We're not getting in arguments. We're not doing heavy workouts. We're not doing cold plunges right before bed. This is a time to relax. This is the time to get into our space. Get into your favorite bedtime clothes. Maybe light a candle. And in this situation, we send them a Hatch Restore. Turn on your Hatch Restore. It's got a nice little amber light, because the sleep dojo is where we're meant to restore and recover. Like, this must be a part of our lives, or we're shortchanging ourselves. We're willfully shortchanging ourselves. So if we respect the sleep dojo and we build this wind down period, and we allow the Hatch Restore, this light and sound machine, into the bedroom, now we can start to wind down, and we have a safe light that's okay for our eyes, and we can begin to wind down, right? Then we have another trick that we use, that's, everybody knows about this, but it's white noise. And you can do white noise, pink noise, brown noise, thunder showers are my favorite. It doesn't matter, so long as it's melodic, it's soothing, you like it, you pick the right volume. And what that does is it buffers out noise pollution, which we know can interrupt sleep cycles. It can interrupt sleep cycles, and you're not able to get the sleep that you need. So it really does help. It really does help. So we've got this whole process, and in the morning, guess what happens? We have a bright light full of blue light. It's okay to have that blue light in the morning that starts and triggers at the same exact time every morning. Now, we know that's not as good as sunlight, but we're building consistency within the schedule. And that's everything. The more consistent we can get with the schedule, the more our hormones and all of our different circadian rhythms, everything has a circadian rhythm, the more they can be in synchronization. We can allow our body to do what it's built to do. Well, if we just allow our body to recover and go through the processes it's supposed to do, it will do its job.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you. Why don't we go ahead? Why don't we actually dive in and talk about like a healthy sleep cycle? And including like, because what is deep sleep? What is REM sleep? What is light sleep? And then, what does these cycles of sleep, once we kind of, you spoke a lot about good sleep hygiene, what it takes to like kind of creating that dojo, calming yourself down before you're going to bed, and like kind of putting on the clothes and, like beginning to turn down the lights and eliminating blue light as you get into bed. Well, like, and then so we finally were able to maybe like achieve this sleep hygiene, hopefully to get into these, is it 3 kind of cycles of sleep that we move through the evening? And can you kind of talk about what they do for the mind and the body?
Yeah, absolutely. The big ones that we want to focus on are deep sleep and REM sleep. The body should naturally go through these processes, but they can be interrupted in a number of different ways, and then we can't go through the processes of recovery and restoration that we need. Deep sleep is also called NREM. So REM is rapid eye movement sleep. It's really bizarre to watch someone's eyes move rapidly during sleep. It's kind of creepy, but in sleep science, you see all this stuff. In fact, everything about sleep is creepy. Like if we told our psychologist everything that we go through in our dreams as if it were reality, we'd be locked up. Yeah. But yet this is a part of our life. This is our reality. But then, we're awake. We got to put on our mask and we got to, follow the rules of normality, and everything has to be like within a certain range and all this. But the beautiful thing about dreams is that we have none of these. It's not linear. We have none of these constraints, and we can just be ourselves, which is a whole nother topic. But they call that rapid eye movement sleep, but AKA dream sleep. And it's interesting because deep sleep, I feel like, is equally as important, but then they call it NREM, which is non-rapid eye movement sleep, which almost makes it seem like a subcategory of REM sleep, but it's really not. It's really not. I don't think that term gives it its true justice, right?
Well, doesn't deep sleep put us in another brainwave where REM is another brainwave as well? Right, where It's like from my understanding, and let me know if I'm correct or incorrect, is like deep sleep takes us into almost that delta phase of brain waves, which is almost very little brain activity at all. Whereas in REM sleep, we're in that theta state, so there are these little slight fluctuations of brain activity, which is why we're in that REM, rapid eye movement sleep, and that's why we're dreaming. Am I correct there?
Absolutely. Have you already been through our program? That's really good.
I have not, but like I have been studying sleep for a long time because I respect sleep just as much as you do, and I just and I'm a science, I'm a geek, around this shit. So so I'm just so I'm in the conversation, I guess you could say.
No, it's beautiful. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And we can actually reach theta brain waves through different types of meditation, right? So transitioning between, and that's what I find so interesting about, I'll answer the question, but that's what I find so interesting about meditation is that we can bridge like the gap between the dream world and the conscious world and all these different things through these practices. But so, you mentioned theta brainwaves and rapid eye movement and dream sleep. A lot of people say that they don't dream. Typically, that's not true, but more common than not, people don't remember their dreams. And that's okay. It depends on when you wake up. It depends on your habits for writing down dreams or a ton of different things. And when we short sleep, we're actually cutting off a tremendous amount of REM sleep, and that could be part of the culprit. But when we're in a dream sleep or a REM sleep state, it looks kind of like we're awake, right? If we look at the metrics for someone who's in a vivid dream, they might have accelerated heart rate, they might have perspiration, like they literally might be sweating. We could have increased blood pressure. We could have all this brainwave activity that looks kind of like we're awake. It looks kind of like we're living out something within that brainwave activity, right? And that we have different ways of measuring that, but that's the extent of our knowledge during dream sleep, right? We just stick a little electrode on somebody's forehead, put a little heart monitor on. You can measure pulse oximetry, you can measure movement, but that's kind of the extent of our power, right? We can't actually go inside someone's head and watch their dream. Maybe with ChatGPT, we'll see. I don't know, but the current limitation of our science is we're just measuring from the outside. We're not on the inside. We're on the outside looking. Looks like heart rate is accelerated. So there are limitations to our understanding of dream sleep, and I say that because my belief is that the dream sleep is where we sort our cognitive dissonances, is where we form our emotional memory, and this is where we maintain our sanity, right? So I feel like it's extremely important, but that can never be proved, right? So anyways, when we're going through dream sleep, it's like we're awake, and in fact the only thing that keeps us from living out these dreams is this paralyzing effect that naturally happens in our body, right? And if we do not paralyze ourselves, it's just an automatic process, then we sleepwalk, right? And imagine like having a dream of skydiving when you live on the second story of your apartment complex. You won't last long without this process, right? And I have lived with a sleepwalker before. It's super weird. It's bizarre. You can't really communicate with them, but they seem. You really? Oh, that's wild.
I fucking walked all the time, man, all the time. Anyway, it was wild for sure.
Let's talk about it offline because I'd love to hear more about that. But so that happens when you're living out your dream, right? And then if you finish your dream and you wake up, but the paralyzing effect is still in place, then that's what we call sleep paralysis, and that is scary. I've never actually experienced. I've experienced a lot of things, so I can imagine what it might be like. But a lot of people freak out about that. The good news is there's no risk to health. It's totally natural and something that you should talk to your doctor about, but it's nothing that you should really worry about. So within this dream sleep, we can see a ton of activity with the body. So that's pretty easy to detect. That's how all of these sleep devices are picking up on dream sleep. It's pretty easy to see when you're in dream sleep. All these vitals start going off the chart. And that's how the algorithm measures, like, okay, he was in dream sleep. But with deep sleep, how we know the difference is that it's very different. Very, very different. Like you said, like we get into that deep, they call it slow wave sleep because the oscillation of your brainwave activity is so slow, it's almost like non-existent. It's like, whoop, our brains are, for the most part, shut down. Right? Who knows what's really going on there? Because we do believe there's some motor memory formation during deep sleep. But what we think is that there's not a lot going on. The blood pressure can drop, the heart rate can drop, like you are just almost catatonic, like you're just, right? And this is a beautiful process because when the entire body just relaxes, right? And imagine how hard that is if you're entering into sleep. Deep sleep is the first major part of sleep. If you're entering into sleep in a fight or flight state with increased noradrenaline levels in the brain, anxiety, hypervigilance, like that's not good, right? So we need to be able to relax. And then when we, boom, hit that deep sleep, a ton of really cool things happen, right? That's when we make our gains in the gym. I used to work with John Defendis, which was, I think he was Mr. USA 1981, something like that. I was a personal trainer in my 20s. And he said, Rob, you make all your gains during sleep. It's in food. It's not in the gym. Of course, you have to go do the workout, but that's because we have this muscle rebuilding process. We have hormone like testosterone and HGH that gets produced and pumped through the body. We have all this cellular regenesis. And something interesting that happens is that our brain is actually going through a recovery process too. Now, imagine if you wake up and disrupt deep sleep. and you can't have the brain recovery process. How are we ever supposed to recover from traumatic brain injuries or blast exposure or, all the, this is what leads to Alzheimer's, right? Because we have these plaque buildups in the brain, and we got to get rid of that. We got to do this brainwashing process. So during deep sleep, the brain, and this blew my mind when I heard this, the brain can reduce in size by more than half. It can shrink and break loose a lot of those plaques, but the cerebrospinal fluid comes in and washes away a lot of that waste to support the lymphatic system, because the lymphatic system only comes up to here. And it also brings in immune cells. So this process is critical. Like, imagine not getting good sleep and not being able to go through that brainwashing process for 20 years, 30 years. And then all of a sudden you start to develop senility disorders or some type of brain disorder. You're like, I can't figure it out. I have no idea why that happened. I eat healthy, I try to do this and that and the other, but you're not getting good sleep, right? That's why they say poor sleep is linked to Alzheimer's and all these other issues.
Wow.
I'm smiling in the background here because I hear the helicopters and the jets, and it brings me back to San Diego, man. So if you're just tuning in and you're wondering why there's helicopters and jets in the background, it's because Rob is sitting there at outside, practicing what he preaches, getting out into nature, and we're hearing the nature of San Diego, the helicopters and the jets. But I want to jump into something that we actually went back and forth on when I was in the class. And then I posted a video, and then you commented on it. It's a video between Joe Rogan and Andrew Huberman, and Joe Rogan asked a very simple question. He just says, "Doesn't caffeine make us feel like we're not tired?" And then Andrew Huberman launches into this huge monologue about, the effects of caffeine and adenosine receptors and sleep and yada yada. And when I posted that, you said, "Hey, I've got to talk about adenosine on the show." So I want to ask you, Rob, two questions. One, how does caffeine affect our sleep? And then two, what role does adenosine play in that? Adenosine and the adenosine receptors.
Yeah. So first off, I want to go ahead and say that I love Andrew Huberman, and I am going to disagree with him. However, I'm not, a Stanford neurobiologist, ophthalmologist, and all these beautiful, wonderful titles. I don't have a sleep lab that has, dozens of undergrads and postgrads like in there whittling away. I just look at this from a common sense perspective. And I think, we can describe my understanding of how caffeine and adenosine play into this whole sleep process. But then I'd be more than happy to talk about the disagreement that I have at this particular juncture. So caffeine, it does a couple of different things, right? But the one that we really want to talk about here is how caffeine goes its way into these receptors that really control our sleep pressure, right? Like Matt Walker, who's a professor over at Berkeley, wrote the book Why We Sleep, talks about the process of sleep pressure, right? So in our circadian rhythm, which is circa, dia, circadian, it just really means the evolution of one day, right? We have this process, and every day, our cortisol goes up throughout the day, melatonin is at its lowest, and then cortisol goes down throughout the nighttime, melatonin is at its highest. So these would be an example of two reciprocal hormones that fall into this 24-hour period, right? So, but we also have this adenosine cycle, this adenosine circadian rhythm, and it kind of matches up with the melatonin and cortisol. Not quite. It doesn't really look the same. The curve looks a little different, but basically we have, if we go all the way back to second grade science, when they taught us about the cellular energy process, or at least they did for me, right? And they're talking about, glucose and how energy is created. Well, we have this ATP, right, as part of the energy process, and they call it adenosine triphosphate. What do they call it? Energy currency or something like that.
Yeah.
So anyways, so this is part of the energy process. Well, ATP just stands for adenosine triphosphate. So one of the byproducts of the energy process is this adenosine that's left over. And, neurons throughout our body
So
have
real quick, Rob,
receptors.
just for the audience, adenosine triphosphate ATP is different than the adenosine you're speaking about, which I believe is adenosine monophosphate, but it's just called adenosine for short, right? Just to
Right.
kind of clarify
Yeah.
for the audience. Right on.
Thanks, brother. Yeah,
Yeah,
so
man.
through this process of energy, meaning like we're awake, we're using energy, the result is this adenosine that's left over, right? And so that leftover adenosine builds up. And what's interesting, we have these receptors all over our body, but the one that we're really focused on is in the forebrain. And so these receptors are very sensitive to adenosine, and adenosine can actually attach to these receptors. And so while we're awake, from the moment that we wake up, this adenosine builds up. It builds up, it builds up. It's part of the energy process. It's part of how our body knows when we've exerted enough energy. So if you utilize more energy and you put out, theoretically, you'd have more adenosine and you'd have more sleepiness or more sleep pressure. But no matter if you're just using your basal metabolic rate or if you're running a marathon, that adenosine is going to build up as long as you're awake. And it just continues to build up and build up. So what that does, there's a couple different types of receptors, but just speaking in broad terms, it attaches those receptors and makes you feel more tired throughout the day. The longer you've been awake, the more adenosine you have, the more sleep pressure you have, the more tired you feel. In fact, at 20 hours or so, you're going to start having micro naps. Involuntary, you're just falling asleep. It's crazy. I've done it while driving on it. That's another topic, but
Scary.
Don't do this at home. But anyways, what's interesting when we look at the structure of adenosine and caffeine, there's a component within the structure that looks very similar. And so the receptors for adenosine really like caffeine, and it doesn't necessarily bind in the same way, but it's definitely similar, and it's very aggressive when it comes in, and it sort of blocks adenosine from being able to latch on and communicate with these receptors. So in essence, like if our brain is listening and waiting for the buildup of this adenosine, and we call that sleep pressure, then if the caffeine comes in and kind of removes that feeling, then all of a sudden we don't feel the sleep pressure and we feel more awake, right? And so that's the effect that we're talking about with caffeine. There are other effects from caffeine, but that's the big one, right? So if we're kind of, if caffeine is like elbowing its way in there and pushing the adenosine out of the way, saying, nope, we're going to block that, then all of a sudden that pressure is removed, you feel more awake, and that is that surge, that effect. But what's interesting is with caffeine, everybody's different, right? It's heavily based on genes, but how fast we metabolize and break down caffeine is different for each one of us, and how sensitive to caffeine we are. They say that a caffeine half-life is 6 hours. So let's say you drink 100 milligrams of caffeine, theoretically 50 milligrams of caffeine will still be present in your system 6 hours later. But that's not exactly how it works, right? Our bodies metabolize it all differently. So for me, I may burn through that caffeine in 2 or 3 hours, right? So that caffeine dissipates and the adenosine attaches those receptors in a more meaningful way. But some people are super sensitive to it, and it can really remain present for a long time. So we have to be careful about how much caffeine we consume. Caffeine is not energy, and when we, depend on it for, trying to get energy or trying to feel awake, there's better ways to do it. There's more healthy ways to support the energy process. But what we do notice is that when people are drinking caffeine, especially after lunch, we recommend not after lunch, at the latest 3 p.m., that those numbers start to add up, right? The half-lives, the quantity of caffeine in your system, and it can really make it difficult to fall asleep at night. There's always going to be somebody that says, yeah, you know what, I drink a espresso as a nightcap before bed and I fall asleep every time. It's like, okay, cool. But for the majority of us, that's not a good idea because
Right.
it can cause us to be more aroused. It can cause us to feel more awake. It can block that adenosine. We can stay up later. It can disrupt our circadian rhythm. We can have more urination during nighttime. We can have lighter sleep because that caffeine is just in our body. So we want to try to not drink that after lunch or after 3 p.m. and just allow that adenosine to build up because that's our sleep pressure. And for people that are complaining about, I can't go to sleep at night. Well, step one, let's let the sleep pressure build up so you actually feel tired. So it's a more natural process to falling asleep.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about sleep aids then, so people, I mean, it's funny you mentioned NyQuil in the beginning and that was part of how you got yourself to sleep a little bit. And NyQuil is like, I don't know what percentage of alcohol it is, but there's a lot of alcohol in NyQuil for sure. So let's talk about like drinking alcohol to fall asleep, if that's helpful or not. I mean, I kind of know the answer. How about smoking weed? A good indica, I'm getting in my body and sleep a little bit deeper or something like that. What about melatonin supplements? And then something like, maybe not the THC in marijuana, but what about like the CBD that also comes from, the cannabis plant as well?
Yeah. Well, I'll say that with good practices, we can get good sleep. We don't need sedatives or a trigger, or
Great.
if we're in the Marine Corps, we call that a crutch, right? We don't need that trigger. That we don't need to become dependent on any one thing to fall asleep, because I see that too often. Oh man, I forgot my melatonin. I can't go to sleep tonight. I need my melatonin. Let's find a drugstore and find some right now. That's all psychological, right?
Yeah, and also creates that the frame in your mind. It's like, oh, if I don't have X, Y, and Z, then I can't sleep, and therefore, if I can't sleep, then I'm fucked in some ways. So yeah, I'm glad you mentioned it, because it's like, again, it's like it's the brain is so powerful. I mean, and we're just habit forming machines, and we can create good, healthy habits to go to sleep, or we can have and also in order to do that, eradicate all the bad habits. So yeah, keep going. Thank you, Robert.
Yeah. Well, so the research is pretty conclusive that alcohol is not good for us in any way. I still have people that argue with me about, oh, 1 glass of wine, it helps with your heart. And I'm pretty sure that that's been debunked several times. I'm not judging people who drink a little bit of alcohol, have a glass of wine. I'm not judgment. This is your experience and your journey. Do with it what you will. But what I will say is that there's a ton of documentation on how alcohol negatively affects sleep. It definitely can make deep sleep not as effective. It can make, again, nighttime urinations like caffeine. Then we can have, after that, we can have dehydration. But this is a sedative, right? It's a sedative-induced sleep. So the thought process is, for people that use alcohol to go to sleep, is like, oh man, I just get that. And admittedly, this is a big problem with firefighters. I love you, firefighters, but we got to get off the bourbon and scotch. But it'll be a finger or 2 fingers, and that's just the process. That's how I go to bed at night. And I get it, right? I was there using the NyQuil. When you feel that chemical or that substance come on, you just, I can relax, right? And it's that changing of state that they're looking for. The problem is there's side effects, right? There's side effects to using drugs, alcohol, or sedatives to go to sleep. And in fact, through mindfulness and through practices, relaxation practices, breathing, meditation, we can actually learn to change state and get the desired outcome that we want naturally within ourselves. We have complete control over this. It might take some time to master this, but we do have the ability to do this. In fact, we have an entire cannabinoid system that, THC and pot activates within our brain, but it already exists there, right? So there's less research on THC because of the legality of it, but the research is showing that THC, I got a buddy who I started working with, and he's like, dude, I love eating an indica. Indica's that mind high, bro. I get that gummy, I eat that indica, and it just puts me to sleep. It's like I'm good, right?
Yeah, it's a body high. Body high is the indica. Yeah.
Is it? Okay, I thought.
Yeah, I'm sorry. You said mind high. I just want to be clear, but yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Nice. So yeah, I'm not an expert on pot, but So I think pot's probably better than alcohol, you know, but it still does affect our sleep. Specifically, we see less REM activity,
Yeah, I
less
was
of the
just going to say that.
deficits. Yeah. So yeah, and please feel free to help me out here.
Yeah, let me
So
chime
yeah,
in real quick.
yeah.
You know, you talked about not a whole lot of research because of legalities, but you know, Will and I have our anecdotal research, if you will. You know, we both wear our Whoop straps, which I know you're aware of, and we talked about the
There it
different
is.
wearables within the. When we went through the course, we talked about the different wearables, the Whoop strap, the Aura ring, yada yada, and we even had the. I forget the name of the mat that we used in the course that still sits underneath my mattress that tracks our heart rate variability, our deep sleep, our REM sleep, and I can tell you when I drink, you know, I don't drink a whole lot, but when I drink, my heart rate variability tanks. Like I don't think anything else affects it as at least in my life as much as alcohol. When I and you know this because we had this conversation. I was using a gummy with a little bit of melatonin and THC in it to go to bed before I went through 62 Romeo, and my heart rate variability would also be decreased with it. I would convince myself that I got good sleep. I was like, well, I was asleep for 7 hours straight, and I didn't wake up. But it was still, I would look at my Whoop records, and it would show that I didn't get into deep sleep or I didn't get into REM sleep for as long as I needed. So yes, that's an anecdote, but I can tell you, for me personally, I've cut away the THC prior to going to bed. I've cut away the melatonin. I've cut away the alcohol, and my sleep is much better. Sometimes it doesn't feel as though it's as good, but I can see the metrics. And later in the day, I have more energy because I haven't used any type of supplement to put me down. It's pretty wild.
Yeah. And, you know, I'll just comment on HRV and what I'm learning about HRV. We're going to have a HRV expert sometime come on the show. It stands for heart rate variability, and it's the variability between the heartbeats. So you can have two people that have a resting heart rate at 60, right? But the variability might be very different between those two people. And also HRV is very unique to each individual. The way HRV works, or the way it's read, is the higher the number, the more you're in a relaxed state of being, a relaxed state of mind, relaxed state of body. So the higher the HRV, especially when you're sleeping, the more you're going to kind of get into that deep sleep and get into and just kind of go through a natural and have a more productive sleep, if you will. But just to kind of clear up some of the science here, I guess. Yeah, let's keep going with. I think we kind of,
I've got one
where
more.
else should we go, or anything else? Any comments, Robert?
Yeah. So one, I want to ask Rob how much time you got. I want to respect your time, brother, because I know you've given us quite a bit of time already here, but I want to respect that. How you doing?
There we go. So I want to, acknowledge you, John, and recognize how proud of you that I am. And John is, for those that don't know, is an amazing human being that is completely dialed in with his sleep. And he comes into this program, and I'm not scared because we deal with some of the worst situations, but then we have people like John who are super squared away, who come into this, and all we want is that 1% improvement, and we're able to hit it. And that's the beauty of this whole thing. So I'm proud of you, man, and
Thanks,
I'm
brother.
honored to know you and to have gone through that process with you.
Well, I appreciate that, and I'm not sure if my mic is working great, but not sure if you heard my last question. Do you have enough time to answer one more question? Because I got one more question for you, brother.
Or maybe two.
I have all the time in the world for you guys.
All right.
Robert,
well, then,
that's awesome.
Then I want to ask you about the environment, right? Within 62 Romeo, we talked a lot about, the sleep hygiene, preparing for the sleep, and then having your sleep dojo blacked out. I mean, if you need to wear eye shades, which I just started doing in 62 Romeo, which help a lot because the sun comes up really early here in Colorado, and if I don't have those on, I'm up at 4:15 or something. Probably not that early, but I'm up early. But what effect does your bed, your pillows, and the environment? What does that play in your sleep?
Well, it plays a huge role. And as we say in the teams, it's shooter choice, right? Like some of these things, some people like weighted blankets. Some people like me, I like light linen blankets. I'm a hot sleeper. I don't do well with the Tempur-Pedic mattresses, the memory foam, because I feel like it traps heat. So I need something that cools me off. I use the bed jet. But also there's one pillow that I've been working with recently that I think you're familiar with, John, and it has been really, I suggest everybody to try it out. I actually brought my pillow out because I might sleep here. Who knows? I just wanted to talk about this one because it's so legit. I was shocked. As you know, different strokes for different folks, but this one has 6 chambers. And what I found is that as I move around throughout the night, I have consistent like firmness, but it's also not hard where it like puts my ear to sleep. And it gives me enough structure because I have a big head. I have a almost a size 8 head. If I don't have enough structure in the pillow, I'm serious, it'll give me a crick in the neck. And this one has been amazing. And there's the brand.
I'll
If
tell
you
you.
can drop a link in there,
We'll definitely drop a link. So for those who are not watching and can't see, I've used that pillow and I have to swear by it too. It's the Mummy Sleep pillow, and it's spelled kind of differently than you may expect. It's spelled MVMI, so the V is pronounced like a U. So Mummy Sleep. And you can actually get that. I've talked to the guy who runs the company, mummysleep.com, MVMI sleep.com. And actually, this is not a plug. We didn't plan this. I did not think that Rob was going to have his pillow there at at the park. That's hilarious. I love it. But we did end up getting a discount code for them too. And the discount code is MIND15, MIND15, and you can get 15% off. So check them out at mvmisleep.com. But yes, man, that pillow is great. And then coming back to the heat or the cool, I use a thing called Chili Sleep. It's a thing that sits right on my bed and it runs cool water through it, and it keeps my bed between 65 and 68 degrees, which to me is like the perfect temperature for me to fall asleep, because I'm a hot sleeper too. I can't sleep on Tempur-Pedic. I cannot. But the downside is that now when I travel, I struggle to sleep anywhere else, man. I'm like, oh man, I don't have my perfect pillow. I don't have my perfect Chili Sleep. But the environment, man, the environment is huge. It plays a huge role in getting that deep rest, right? So what else can we do to make our environment? So choosing the blanket, choosing the pillow, sleeping with an eye shade, the clock that you mentioned before, the hatch restore. And that's a clock that has noise that plays from it. It has red light at night, so you're not getting the blue light, and then blue light in the morning, which can wake you up, which is actually a really nice way to wake up rather than getting jolted up by your alarm. What else, man?
Well, and I'll say, I'll give a plug to myself.
Please. As he's about to give him
with a long pause. I love it. It's a long, dramatic pause, Robert. We're still pausing.
ChatGPT cut him off.
Still looks frozen.
All right. Well, I'll tell you what. We'll hope he comes back. But if we can't get him back here, he's given us a great bunch of information on how we can get better sleep and why that deep sleep, why that better sleep is important to us. We see all too often.
You get one that'll play for like 8 or 10 hours. So you don't have to worry about it turning off.
Hey, Robert, sorry. Could you start over a little bit?
White noise machine or something on your phone that you can take with you on travel is pretty profound. It turns out that in a study that Alain Mouzet did, which we talk about in the program, but it really makes a good point. He tested a 17-year-old healthy male on 2 nights, one with no interruptions, and the second night with noise interruptions.
We're getting noise. Yeah, this is pretty bad, but hopefully you guys are picking up enough here. So the white noise. So Rob, if you can hear us, you're dropping off. We're starting to lose you a little bit. But white noise, it helps with that. But where I was going is also, before Rob came back, was that, hey, Rob, sorry, man, I see you come back. We've lost you a little bit there. But I just want to touch on the fact that so much is out there on social media about, grinding. And there's definitely benefit to doing hard work and getting after it. But you have to take a break. You have to take a break for yourself physically, mentally, and emotionally. And part of that includes getting sleep. Another buddy of mine that's here locally in Colorado Springs recently posted, his name's Greg Van Dyne, great on LinkedIn. He posted that rest is productive. And what that means is that by taking that pause, you reset your brain, you reset your body, you reset your spirit, and you're able to come back and do more. So don't grind, no matter what's out there. I call it grind porn, because it's really, we start to glorify the people that are putting in 20-hour days at work. Anyway, we lost Rob here. He's coming back. We'll see. There he is. So Rob, we'll wrap it up, man. The one thing I know I heard you say was you wanted to give yourself a plug, and then you dropped off. So I want to give you that opportunity to give yourself that plug again.
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to say that the Hatch Restore is great, but I'm coming out with my own light and sound machine that is going to break the mold. It's not a widget off Amazon. This is a truly unique piece of technology that I think it's going to really change things for sleep. We're calling it the Sleep Frog, but it's a light and sound device that goes in the bedroom, and it's a smart device. It's amazing.
Fantastic. Look forward to seeing that, man. Looking forward to helping to promote that to our listeners. So ideally, we'd love to turn it over to you to run this closing practice. But prior to that, how can people get a hold of you if they want to get in touch with you, brother?
I'm all over socials at Sleep Genius, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. I am on TikTok, LinkedIn. Rob Sweetman, Sleep Genius. If they want to go apply for the 62 Romeo program, you can go 62r.org. It's just 6 letters, 62r.org, and that'll direct you to the site. We do have scholarships. We have scholarships for firefighters, and then we have an athletic scholarship that we just launched to help people pay for the program, to put them through that, because we want to break through those barriers. So that's it.
Solid, man. Solid. And then I'll turn it over to you to lead that closing practice for us, brother. Hopefully, if you drop off, me or Will will pick up, but I'll turn it over to you to run with it.
I just want to say one thing before we do that. And it's just coming to me right now. If you go to buy a house or you want to look at an apartment, don't they always comment on, or isn't it always, how many bedrooms is the place? And just think about that. Like, if there's you want a 2-bedroom apartment, 1-bedroom apartment, 3-bedroom house, 5, why is it by bedroom? That's how fucking important sleep is. You know what I mean? Like, just think about that. We think about our square footage, our houses, based on the number of bedrooms. So put yourself to sleep 7 to 9 hours a night is what I've understood to be like kind of the sweet spot for sleep. We discuss sleep hygiene. So up your sleep hygiene. Get involved in 62 Romeo if you don't know what that is. The alcohol is obviously not helping you. You don't need the CBD or the THC, to fall asleep. You just, I think, need more education, like Rob was talking about, more relaxation, right? As well as and maybe some tools that can help you understand your circadian rhythm as well. So I don't know. I love sleep so much, and understanding good sleep hygiene and what good sleep is. So thank you, Robert, for today. And please take us away with your grounding practice and your closing practice. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Will. And thanks, John. So today we'll do a simple box breathing followed by a little bit of silence. You're going to hear some noises in the background here because I'm in an active area. That's all part of the practice, right? So we'll just remove ourselves from that and find the stillness within ourselves. So bear with me. So in honor of James Nestor and the research that he posted in the book Breathe that John got me to read, we'll do a 6-second box breath. And so 6 seconds is really significant because of the timing and the structure of how we breathe. And I feel like it's a very special number. Some people have not done 6-second breaths before, and so it can be challenging. And then when we deal with folks that are maybe have some trauma, when we hold on the box breath portion, which I'll explain, when we hold on that, that can be a little bit triggering sometimes. So through the practice, feel free to reduce the amount of time that you're holding. And if it helps, you can think of it as pausing rather than holding or stopping. So in essence, we're going to breathe in for 6 seconds. We're going to hold for 6 seconds. We'll breathe out for 6 seconds, and then we'll hold for 6 seconds, and that forms a box. That's how we come up with the term box breathing. It's definitely stuff that we've done in the SEAL teams, so you know it works. So I'll keep it somewhat brief because we're live, but we'll do 5 rounds of that, followed by just a couple of minutes of silence to go deep within ourselves. So when you're ready, go ahead and get into a nice seated position or cross-legged stance, or whatever makes you feel the most comfortable. Relax the body. If you're seated, try to put your head above your hips so that we have chakra alignment. And we're just going to relax. Let the shoulders drop. And we're going to begin by exhaling all of our breath and bringing the belly to the spine. Now let's breathe in. Hold. Breathe out. Hold. 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 Breathe in for the last round. Hold. Breathe out. Hold. Return to the normal breath, relax, and let's just spend a few moments in silence. Whenever you're ready, you can gently start to back. Flutter your eyes. And return.
Nice, brother.
Excellent. Yeah.
Appreciate that.
Thank you so much, Robert.
Seems like nature respected the box breathing. They were super silent during the box breath, but then came back during the silence. But it was, like you said, it's part of the practice, right? And I can tell that you just went through the Veterans Path AMP course, man, with bringing your navel to your spine, man. I know that's a Mark Williams thing. So anyhow, hey, great having you here, brother. Fantastic input, fantastic advice, fantastic experience that you've shared with our audience and with me and Will today. We appreciate you, and we appreciate what you're doing with 62 Romeo, and we appreciate the cause behind it, the why behind it, right? It's not about making money, it's about the impact. So we hope that this episode helps to bring that impact to more people and bring more people to the 62 Romeo course. And Will, I'll turn it over to you to wrap it up, brother.
Just another big thank you, Robert. And maybe as a historical reference, June 7th, 2023, completely unrelated to the show, but we are, all that smoke that's coming from Canada is like literally, it is like almost not quite nighttime, but I can't believe the amount of smoke. I'm going to close my windows after this. I can't believe how I've never seen anything like this in my life. So unrelated to the show, but I'm like, holy shit. Like as we're going through the show, like this cloud is just like, we're inundated by smoke right now. And I can even smell it in my apartment. Anyway, it's really wild. But maybe it's time for me to go sleep. But Robert, thank you so much for joining us today and for sharing all this wisdom and helping our audience to get to know sleep, and hopefully this inspires you to sleep a little bit better and take care and respect your sleep for sure. So any parting words, Robert, before we go?
Just, I'm in gratitude. Thank you.
Amen, brother. Back at you.
Thank everybody for listening. Have a fantastic
Until next time, take care.
Peace. Thank you.
Oh, motherfucker. I even looked for that file beforehand, but hey, we don't have our closing video, so we're just gonna say goodbye. I looked for it beforehand, it played. I don't know why. It's just Murphy coming at us, man. Full speed today, last week, but here we are. All right, awesome. Gents, until next time, take care.